Money Matters on FOSS 107 with Hinckley and Rugby Building Society.
So, very good morning. Wednesday morning on FOSS 107, time for Money Matters. I'm joined by Colin Fife, the CEO of Hinckley and Rugby Building Society. Good morning to you, Colin.
Good morning.
So, this morning, got an interesting topic this morning. We're going to be talking about financial institutions on the high street. Or not, as the main case may be. So, do you think it's important that financial institutions like banks and building society are represented on those streets?
Yes, I do. There's a lot of people in the local communities who value that trip to the local bank or building society. Now, it may be that there's some activity that they could conduct online, through a website, through an app, but there's others where they enjoy going to talk, going to get some advice from a human being, and that's where I think it's really important that we provide that service on the high streets.
And we've often talked about a lot of people's applications, a lot of people's lives, a lot of people's stories about how they earn their money, etc., is not a dead standard. And they do need to talk to somebody that can advise them on policies and mortgages for them.
Absolutely. I mean, you can write things down on a bit of paper, but you perhaps can't tell the story as strongly as if you speak to someone. And we find that regardless of age, there is a demand for service on the high street. Now, I couldn't say that people still withdraw the same amount of cash as they used to maybe 50 years ago, because ATMs or paying by card are much more popular. But that if something's not just quite straightforward, or there's a challenge with something, or I just need a bit of advice, it's good to go and see a human being. And that's why Hinckley and Rugby, we're very committed to all the high streets that we're on.
And it's also great that you can discuss. I mean, sometimes if for instance, that somebody wants to borrow some money and they can demonstrate to you verbally and show you how they've been saving money or been paying rent. You can't always just tick boxes, can you? And everybody's story is different in a way, isn't it?
Every single story is different. You're right, and. Demonstrating that you can afford a mortgage is something that we all have to do, and therefore having those documents that you're alluding to, or just being able to sit down over a cup of tea and say this is what's been happening to me over the last few years. That is difficult to do when you apply online, or you fill in a piece of paper. And I think there is a duty in financial services to make sure that service continues. Yes, the world is becoming more digital, but there are still services where you want to reach out to a human being. And as I said, it's not any age group. There are young people who also are maybe very digitally savvy, but when it comes to perhaps a mortgage and understanding what it's all about, they want to talk to a human being.
Yeah. And do you think it's really important that those facilities where people need a bit of cash or check the balance and stuff like that, because we're even losing holes in the wall, the cash points, aren't we? We're not just losing banks, which are and building societies and buildings. We're actually losing a lot of the cash machines as well that people use on a quite a regular basis.
Yep, we absolutely are. And it will be really interesting to see over probably the next 10 years whether some of the reports come true that we could head towards a cashless society. Now, I'm not sure we'll ever get to that stage maybe in my lifetime. Certainly more people are using cards because of the convenience. But I'm also a great believer in choice. Give the customer the choice of how they want to interact with you. Do they want to come and see you face to face? Do they want to do it by phone? Do they want to do it in writing? Live chat has been a big growth area where people want to apply for a loan or change their car insurance while they're doing something else. You know, people are multitasking more now than they probably ever did in the past.
Yeah.
But I big believer in giving people choice, and that's why I believe we should retain these services on the high street.
And you know what? Do you think that having a cashless society, I mean, I've only just recently started using contactless in bars and restaurants and all that sort of stuff. And it's very, very easy to lose control of your finances when you're doing it that. Well, when you had cash in your wallet for that, it's very easy to see, well, I had 50 quid there and it's gone now. But when you tap in, it's not quite as easy to keep track of it, is it?
I completely agree with you. You know, whether it's shopping, whether it's a night out in a pub or a restaurant, it is very easy just to keep going and then work out the next morning how much you spent, and that can be a dangerous cycle. I guess it's that is a risk with a sort of cashless society. The other one is that it may be no surprise that over recent years the level of fraud has increased dramatically, and there are some very smart criminals who are very good at getting the money out of our pockets or out our bank or building society accounts. So whilst convenience is good, there has been some consequences.
Yeah. Now, I know recently we covered a story on FOSS 107 about the sad closure, the potential closure of the HSBC bank in Market Bosworth. And we were talking to a lot of locals there, and they were telling us the same story, that, it's the last bank in Market Bosworth. And often we're hearing stories about, well, this is the last bank here or the last bank there. Do you think maybe all the banks and financial institutions ought to get together and have just one, and maybe have a counter for each of them? Do you think that'd be kind of a good idea?
There are discussions on that at the moment, using the post office as the sort of central hub.
Yeah.
Now that's good if you've got a post office, and if that post office has got the capacity to be able to handle those transactions. So I'm sure that will work in certain areas, but in others it might be lacking. You know, there once upon a time there used to be vans. You know, you would get the community van that would drive around different villages, different small towns. Unfortunately, I don't see many of them in the road now either. No.
So I've got a question here, an interesting one actually. And to be honest with you, this has happened to me quite a lot. A lot of retailers used to offer cash back when you made a purchase, especially in the larger retail establishments. It's not happening so much now. Why is that?
It's not happening so much because they're not getting a lot of cash in from payments, and if they take cash out from their bank, it costs them money to do so.
Right.
So if they stock up in their till,
right,
and take that money from the cash, there's a cost to it, and very few of us are paying cash for petrol anymore, for example.
Yeah.
So therefore, you're seeing less and less of that.
Interesting. Well, thank you for that. And what do you, I mean, we've got in the Atkins building in Hinckley, I think there's like a community hub there. I mean, do you think that sort of thing's a good idea, or should that be on the high street, do you think?
I think that there are some opportunities for what we'd call pop-up branches. You get pop-up retail stores, perhaps close to Christmas.
Yeah.
So there are opportunity for pop-up financial services branches. It really just depends what service can they provide. You know, do they have the infrastructure to be able to give cash out or take cash in, to be able to open accounts or close accounts? It really depends what that bank or building society decides to do. I don't think it'll ever be as strong as having a permanent branch on the high street, and hopefully we'll never get to that day where we lose all of those branches.
Hopefully we won't get to that day. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it, and coming in and having a chat with us. And don't forget, as always, if you want to get your question in, then do head to the website foss107.co.uk. Click on Money Matters with Hinckley and Rugby Building Society, and put in your question, and I could be asking Colin next week. Have a good week, mate. Thank you so much.
You too.
Money Matters on FOSS 107 with Hinckley and Rugby Building Society.